Okay, everyone, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to number 2 with the review of the agenda. Right off the bat, we would like to take note for topic C, items for information. We are actually going to scratch number 1, the mentorship update. So that will be coming off of the agenda for today. With that being said, do we have any other corrections or concerns for the agenda? All right, great. I think we're ready to move on then. We're going to go into general public comment. So this is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the agenda. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you will be ruled out of order. The board cannot enter into discussion during general public comment. Do we have anybody in person who would like to provide comment? Do we have anybody online? Okay, all right. So then moving into new business and consent action items. Do I have anyone who would like to provide a motion?
So moved.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Perfect. We have a first and a second. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any board comment? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Okay. Motion passes. 6. I think we have 6 today. Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Continuing to move forward, B, items for action. We're going to go ahead and start with number 1, approval of the Health Benefits Committee's recommendation for plan year 26-27 premium rates.
Carrie, do you want to kick that?
Sure, yeah. So as you recall, last board meeting, we came to you with a recommendation of a 15.5%, which we knew was pretty significant to our members, but trying to balance that with the fiscal responsibility of the health plan. So at your direction, the Health Benefits Committee came back together and met a couple of times over the last month. We partnered with Bridge Health Alliance and Alliant, our consultant, and really dug further into those numbers to see what we could do to come back with a proposal that would maintain the fiscal responsibility of the self-funded health plan, but also try to reduce the burden to our employees. And so what we have in front of you is a proposal of 8.5% increase to insurance premiums for the 26-27 plan year. Our plan year, as you recall, runs 10/1 through September 30th. The reason for the reduction from 15.5 to 8.5 was primarily for 2 things. One, we have one high-cost claim that's going to be funded through a different account. This is one-time money only, so we are very cognizant of that. But we have been working with Alliant, and we do think that there could be a path for future options to keep this cost off the health plan. So we're exploring that, but right now this is one-time money only. The other reason for the reduction in the proposal is that Bridge and Alliant were able to really get together and dive into the contracts that they are working on negotiating with our multiples of Medicare and our other contract providers, and they see that there's probably about a 3% savings there. So those were the 2 primary factors that resulted in the reduction that we're bringing forward as a recommendation for your consideration today. Happy to entertain questions.
If I may interject, I think Kay has probably a perspective around where we're at as well. Do you mind sharing your thoughts?
No, I don't mind at all. So it was really, I think, heartening and useful to be able to have Bridged and Alliant and the committee have these opportunities to really hear in more detail, like how is it that we can think about, the costs that we should be thoughtful about, and what are the various ways that we can think about possible savings. Of course, you know, insurance is such, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what's going to happen to our members, and even we have a pretty good prediction about costs that members for this next year, but the committee as a whole, I think, was pretty unanimous in feeling reassured that we could count on some savings with the bridged work that's been going on, and with some more thinking. And then the big piece of the puzzle was the district being willing to help us this year with this larger cost that was going to result in a pretty significant percentage of that increase. So anyway, I think the group as a whole, and Jane, you could speak to this too, felt very reassured. We didn't feel like we were making a irresponsible or careless decision. And again, the lion's share of that is coming from this one-time contribution from the district. We also felt, as we talked things through, that there was a likelihood of other 1, 2, 3% savings as we look to next year, and as we work out things with Bridged. And as we work on, another thing we talked about a lot were some of the ways in which we could make adjustments to our current plan options in order to also kind of control some costs. And there was a lot of good thinking about that, which, you know, as a committee and as a plan, we can't just say we're going to do all of this all at one time. But we have a good list of things to look at and to consider carefully for this upcoming year that I think will help us to control costs. So there's some thoughts. I don't know, Jane, do you want to add anything?
I agree that those discussions that we had about what we can work on next year, because we don't know about this one-time money, because it's one-time money, we want to be able to look at our plan and make those changes that will alleviate the need for that. And so it's a big plan, but we're going to do it in a year.
Yeah.
So I'll follow up on it, and maybe I'll answer some of the questions that would come out. My hope, aspiration, directive was to get us more time. I didn't feel like when we had the 15.5% before us, we had enough time to really understand it. And what I mean by that is that I don't believe that we had Bridge and Alliant at the table long enough to build a relationship that they could have an honest conversation. My directive was that I don't want you to have this gunfight in front of all of us. You go behind the scenes, get this figured out, and bring back a recommendation to us. And so they did that. And I watched, and I was part of some of those conversations behind the scenes as they were working through some hardship, joining forces. But like it or not, Bridge is with us, and they needed to be able to work, and our consultant needed to work with Bridge in a fashion they'd never been before. And so we needed to come together and figure out what that looked like. Furthermore, it was not going to ever be, this is going to be the long-term fix. I wanted, pardon the pun, I wanted to bridge this year so that we can learn what Bridge can bring to the table, so that we're not expressing a 15.5%, that we can do something a little smaller, a one-time fund to help get us into next year. And as we started those discussions, everybody said, yeah, but we can do, and we can do, and we can do. And that wasn't the intent. Let's just get ourselves into a position that we can manage it this year and have more time to do what ifs. Bigger co-pays and whatever else that we were talking about can come later, but we just needed to get into next year and buy ourselves some time so we can start living together and build a relationship so we can best manage our plan for our people. You might ask, where's that one-time money coming from? It's interlocal. It's $495,000. So $500,000 is coming out of interlocal. That's, I know for a fact that's where it is going to come from, but we might be creative and find some other options as well. But right now, one-time money, we made it very clear. It's once. And the plan needs to find out how we're going to be able to manage this later. We do have some extra ideas around what that might look like. Now, I want to be really clear. That one claim, that's a human. That's a person going through some really tough times. And so when we say we're pulling them out, I don't want to exclude them from being part of the membership. They're still ours. They're still a person. Then they have medical needs. It just costs a lot of money. we're trying to figure out how to best serve that person and then the 1,000 employees that we also have under our plan. So one-time money, interlocal, looking at as ethically and moral as we can, bringing that person in and supporting them, but yet lowering the cost to get us to one more year so that we have further conversations. And I think I would have felt comfortable coming to you at 7.5%, 7%. I think that's where our range was, but we got up to 8 because we wanted to protect the plan. We really wanted to get, we could have got that down to 7 probably, but because of the flexibility that we had. So that's where we're at. We're bringing out 8.5.
How did we settle on that 8.5 if we had some flexibility?
It's just how, we could have put 0. We could have literally said, well, let's just go 0. And our reserves could have paid for the rest of it. So but we could have went 15. So it was somewhere in the middle there. And so what the committee, and I'm not part of the committee, I was just a voice in the room. The committee said that, and with the recommendation of Mike Bonneville and Bridge, they were both at 8.5. But as we were running through our numbers, and I think Janie and I both had the same number on our sheet, it was like, 7 looks right about right. That's pretty risky, but I think we could have been there.
I think Bridge said it very well. It really is about your tolerance of risk. There is no crystal ball, and so it's trying to find that balance of what protects the financial stability of the plan balanced with our numbers. Again, Bridge and Alliant came to us with about 4 different proposals of what we could do. The committee elected 3 of those, ones being cost neutral, and so had we elected some of the other things, maybe that number could have came down a little bit more, but we wanted to balance that with the opportunity to look at the bigger plan design and not cherry pick a couple things without being holistic of what we were doing. So it's a delicate balance, trying to do it in a short time frame, and really appreciate everybody that came in over the summer to be part of that. So
Ross, probably that committee's chair, Ross, he said, well, all right, let's slow down. Once we were getting into these co-pays, they're like, let's do this. Like, we just need more time, which is exactly what I wanted. Like, I want more time to have those discussions. So we didn't jump into other alternatives to assist the plan and yet our people. So we'll have more conversations. The committee will. So that's the recommendation for you.
That's all right, I'm fine. First of all, I just want to thank Janie Kay for being on the Health Benefits Committee for such a long time. It's probably not the most energized, exciting, and very, maybe it is. I haven't been to a meeting. I should have been.
It's been energized.
But anyway, it's very important, and it's a lot of detail, and just thank you for that work, and thank you for Rex and to our team for stepping up. You know, we know that we always have to watch our budget, but we also really, this is what I want to say to a lot of people who are in leadership, the board administration cares a lot about our employees. And when, especially people on the lower end of the salary scales, you know, these affect them the same as if they were at a higher end, and so it's a little bit regressive, and it feels bad, and I think sometimes it feels like maybe benefits are being taken away, but this issue is a national issue. The health field has had more inflation than almost anywhere else, and it's something I think we're going to continue to battle. But you know, if employees come to you with this problem, no, I just want to impart that there's a lot of we feel a lot of responsibility, and we really want to make it as good as possible, but we only have so many ways that we can do that. And I know we can't use the interlocal every year, but I really appreciate getting that bridge so that people actually don't have a reduced and take-home pay, and we can get this figured out and maybe come to a better spot. I bet there's going to be some snag every year that you're going to have to untangle, so I really appreciate all your work.
I would just like to follow up. Also grateful for all the time that people spend working on this issue. But I also just want to say it is still an 8.5%.
You're right.
And so there will be an impact on people's paychecks throughout the district, and it will disproportionately affect people who are lower on our pay scale. So just wanted to keep that sort of acknowledged. Yeah, 8.5% is still
pretty steep increase.
significant. Yeah, it's
So,
way better than 15.5.
yeah, put that
It's still
into context with Kay's talking about I think there were some charts floating around that a 15.5% increase is gonna be a couple $100 more coming out of people's checks. And so running from 15.5, obviously half of 15 is nearly 8, so it'll be instead of $200, it's $100 extra coming out. So it's significant, but to Kate's point, we're still seeing almost a 9% increase in healthcare, and that's not going away. So just put it in context, it's still difficult,
Okay.
but it's better.
Comments? Go ahead.
Just a quick question, Rex, so as we plan for next year, I mean, do you see, we haven't approved the budget yet for next year, will you see, are we gonna need to adjust and we look at the budget for next school year? I mean, are we gonna need to focus on insurance, that piece of it, to prepare for the unknown so that we don't find ourselves a year from now going back? I mean, is this gonna affect our budget that you're gonna propose for us for next year, looking futuristic on insurance?
So, yeah, the big question on that is, will it impact our budget? So it's $500,000, it will impact, but we do have that in our interlocal. And kind of that interlocal, as you remember, is always going to be some sort of a savings account in case of. So yeah, it's going to be an impact, but we feel confident that, we're very confident that we have that for this year. Your interlocal from year to year is one-time monies, right? And so we don't know what next year's gonna bring. And that's why I said it was one time. I don't want the committee and the plan to rely on it from year to year, because we just don't know what it looks like. So that's not fiscally responsible. But for this 1 year, $500,000 will not be accounted for in curriculum or other areas in which we need it. We'll still be okay, but it's still $500,000.
But I was just thinking about, do we have to try to build in $250,000 or $500,000 into our budget for next year?
No.
Knowing that,
No, I don't think this is a self-funded plan. And so when it becomes district-funded and self-funded plan, then we got a problem. It's no longer a self-funded plan. And so to build in that and taking it out of other areas of curriculum and or other needs, that doesn't make sense fiscally. So we want to make sure that the plan itself is solvent, that it takes care of itself, and it's not reliant upon one-time monies that may or may not be there. That's not healthy.
thank you.
Yeah.
So that's that one-time money with the savings account. We have it in there, we're pulling it out and using it to pay for this. So just as he said, it doesn't intertwine into the budget the same way where we're trying to prep forward. We have this currently, and that's just the direction we're going to be using that in. So with that being said, again, I really also appreciate Kay kind of coming forward to recognize that that 8% that we are proposing truly is significant, but recognizing too that it was half of what was originally brought forward. So I'm really glad that we were able to find a place, you know, middle ground, if you want, on how we can make that look. And I do look forward to having this coming year's work to try and hopefully minimize and maybe not even have this much of an increase for future premiums. So.
Here, Shannon's here, part of the public, but also on the committee, and the committee members can attest that there was some momentum. It got somewhat contagious around having bridge in the conversation, which is a new idea, some new thoughts. We really started to roll with like, yeah, but we can do this and we can do that and we can do. So I think there's excitement around understanding what else we can manage that we haven't had a chance to have before, because we've been doing the same thing over and over, right? Just with different outcomes because of the multiple Medicare or charge master, what we're seeing across the nation. So more to come.
Money well spent.
This is just to get us into next year. Don't forget, open enrollment's coming at us quickly.
Okay, do we have any other comments, questions? All right, I would entertain a motion. Anybody have that?
I move for approval of the Health Benefit Committee's recommendation for plan year 2026-2027 premium rates.
Thank you, I have a motion, do I have a second? Thank you, I have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment?
I was actually missed who the second was from.
Who's second?
Siobhan.
Siobhan. Public comment, any further board comments? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Okay, it passes 6-0. Okay, that then moves us into our next item for action, approval of the transition to an administrative step salary.
Excuse me, Carrie, I'll take this.
Perfect.
So this one is interesting. We got a couple an email yesterday about it, and I just want to put this into context. We've been working on this now, Jim, for 2 years?
Yep.
Year and a half? A year?
Coming up on 2.
10?
Yeah.
It's been a
10
while.
years.
And through this, 2020, when the district decided to recognize, and there was trustees recognizing, I remember being in a meeting with, as I was transitioning in, the board saying, we've got to fix admin. And we all know the outcome of that when we internally tried to fix that thing, or when the plan was put together and implemented, it blew out. And so I instantly recognized the fact that we as internal will never do that ourselves again. We need a third party, we need a neutral party to analyze and make recommendations. And so we're thankful, I say it every time we're with CMS, we're thankful for the work that CMS is doing to support the organization. And if you remember, we've got, I always say this, my tongue gets twisted, paid plan rules, we have pay philosophy, we've worked on independence. Now remember that we have a collective bargaining unit with 7 or 8 units. We also have 2 represented members or payroll groups that are admin and independents, and so they don't get to negotiate, and so they can't. And so that's where this work is trying to blend the negotiated payroll groups and the non-negotiated together under one umbrella of a pay plan rules and philosophies. The admin's last to come to the table, and we've talked about, I purposely have said, here's independence, admin's coming. Here's this, admin will be a little later. We've purposely done this to the last seat of the table. Often, for a board perspective, we've been criticized that when we make those adjustments in July, it looks like we're the first to the table. In all honesty, we are the last, the admin team is the last to the table, because we run through all of our payroll groups, and with our teacher union, we had a 2-year contract, which is thankful for that. But we always run this admin right at the end of the year, fiscal year, so that everyone else is before. I just feel like it's the appropriate way to do that. We did bring in June the 2%, as everybody else saw, that we just finalized the 2% with the admin, 2.5% with the admin in June. But what we recognized during the 2020, and I think Siobhan was with us during that year, is that there was a quick correction on Title II and Title 20 employees in the admin and how to correct the upper end of that. And so we made some adjustments and then froze everybody on one step for the admin team. And we know that wasn't healthy, but that was the correction at the time. And through the last couple of years, and the recommendations from CMS is that our admin team also need a step process, a matrix, if you will. And so that's where Jim has been working Jim and his team, for the last 18 months of what this step process looks like. I didn't approve this matrix, or I didn't finalize and put my eyeballs on it until yesterday, the day before yesterday. And so this was before the agenda was posted on Friday. So that's why you didn't see it, because I was still making tweaks to it. In fact, I sent an email out to my admin team last week and said, you're not going to be able to see it, because I'm still adjusting it. So you will be able to get a chance to see it once we get here. You have the opportunity to hear the presentation today. You have the opportunity to make a decision if you're going to move forward with it, or if you want more time. We always have that opportunity. But we've been in this process for a long time with the recommendations from CMS. So I'm going to turn it over there. It kind of gives you a history. I think, Keller, Lisa, you've seen this unfold before your eyes as a resident here. Most of us, probably Jennifer Walsh and Siobhan, lived through those 2020, 2021, 2022 years to get to this point. I'm not shying away from it, right? We've learned. I really don't think you don't get to be experienced until you get through, you leather up a little bit and you bleed. And so all those experiences have made us better and stronger. And one of my perspectives and philosophies in this district is always to build district-wide programs, consistent programs and systems. To have CMS on board is a process in building strong systems in our district. And it's not a one-time fits all, like they didn't just give us a recommendation and they walk away and we put it on the shelf and it gets dusty. We're gonna bring them in for market adjustments for everyone throughout the years. So this is a long-term commitment with CMS. I don't want it to be one time, put it away, and then all that data becomes stale and it's not useful. We'll never be able to use it again. So it's important for us to keep this moving forward. With that being said, I think we're now is this our last group before we start all over again?
It is.
Yeah, it's our last group.
Can I ask just really quick, do we have this information in what was provided for us today? Were we going to get copies of the PowerPoint or?
Yeah, you want to pass that up? Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, we have.
thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for the reminder. We had it, we just didn't. Yeah. Whoever wants them there.
You don't mind, Chair.
So Jim?
While she's handing that out,
Yeah.
I just want to, a lot of administrators are here. It has been a chore and a very controversial one, and it's calmed down. Those of you that were here when there was not really a plan and it was willy-nilly, I know there was large pay freezes and chunk payouts, and it was difficult. So long-term people that are on this matrix, I want to thank you for staying the course, and also to Rex and team for getting this done finally in a way that works for everyone. And it is, I know it came out with our Diana Groves that if we got this matrix done, it would really help with our morale and our trust with one another. So I think we're in a good spot. It's been a long road to get there, but just want to thank everyone for either sticking it out or getting the work done.
There's very few things I would refuse to do if the board asked me or directed me to. This is one of them. That if I had to make this myself, I wouldn't do it. We're going to get somebody else to help us with that. So, Carrie, unless you had something else, we can let Jim.
I think I'll turn it over to Jim and I can supplement as needed or help answer questions.
We're pretty fortunate to have CMS in town.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that worked out well. I gave Carrie credit this morning. I said, that's one of the smartest thing you've ever done is bring CMS in. I'm glad that she had that idea.
Great. Thanks, Rex. Thanks, Carrie. Carrie, if we can go to the next slide, I'll just, what we're going to cover today, and actually Rex kind of already did, is just a recap of our efforts to date. I want to give you some information about the admin salary matrix and let you know what the implementation would look like this year. So going to the next slide, just a quick recap. We conducted a salary survey, and like Rex said, we're coming up on about 2 years now. All this work that we've been doing has been guided by the compensation philosophy that the board developed and approved. We had a joint committee, trustees, union representatives, staff representatives, did great work coming up with the compensation philosophy for the school district, and that's really been our guiding star for all of this work we've done. We designed a classification and pay plan to support that compensation philosophy. We've implemented classification and pay for independents. Basically, the non-union folks, we approved the general wage increase for the employee groups, so that's going to happen on July 1st. And now, like Rex said, this is kind of the final piece of the puzzle as we want to get this pay plan in place for administrators. So going to the next slide, Gary, the reasons, like I said, we want to be consistent with the compensation philosophy, and a couple of key elements of the board-approved compensation philosophy is we want consistent practices for all employees. So there will be some differences with employee groups, but generally we want to provide similar opportunity for advancement, similar predictability across groups. So this matrix will promote logical and consistent progression for staff. Again, none of this is a promise to pay or a contract to pay. I mean, the board will still retain authority to decide if we're going to do these adjustments each year. But what the system will give us is a predictable and a reliable way for us to budget that. And when Carrie and Sam are doing the budgets, they can say, okay, here's what it would look like for the progression to keep people moving. Staff can better predict yearly increases when the wage increases are consistent. It's really going to support some of our internal equity and some of the issues we have, like wage compression. And we might have some of our higher paid teachers compressing up against some of our administrators, or we may have newer administrators being paid close to folks that have been with us a long time. So the system will help us kind of reliably address those compression issues, let people budget and plan predictably. It'll help us better recruit and retain staff. Again, we'll have a range. There'll be some opportunity for growth rather than here's a single rate. We don't know if there's going to be an increase or not. So I think it'll lend a lot of structure. I just want to be clear too, there's 30 administrative employees in 13 different classifications, so this is a pretty large group of folks. We tend to only think about maybe a few top people when we think of administrators, but it's a huge part of our workforce and some really key and critical positions. So it's really important that we get this all consistent. Just to give you a sense of the process we went through, on to the next slide there, Gary, is we did develop a classification system. So we did a salary survey, as you all recall, got a sense of where we stood in regard to the market. We're pairing that market data with a job content-based classification system that Carrie's administering. The reason we don't just go with pure market pricing is we want to make sure we're looking at the qualifications, the duties, the scope of jobs when we're placing pay. And it kind of gives us a second check or a double check. And one example of a reason for that is if there were, say, a gender inequity in pay in the market, we don't want to perpetuate that at the Helena School District. So Carrie's going to look at the market, but she's also going to look at the content and qualifications of jobs when ranking them on the matrix. And then what we're going to talk about today is we're going to place these administrative employees on the new wage matrix, and that'll give us a context within which to act or manage pay from there. So just to give you a sense of what this new administrative wage matrix looks like, I'm sorry that's such small font, you probably can't see anything up there. But just wanted to give you a little background. When we did the salary survey, looking at administrative positions, what we found is we may have the same administrative position in different districts that had different numbers of contract days. And we were really trying to compare apples to apples. So what we did when we did the survey was kind of boil everything down to an hourly rate equivalent, or a daily rate equivalent, so we could compare equitably across different contract days. We also expressed the attendant matrix and the teacher matrix in similar terms, so expressing it this way allows us to kind of compare across employee groups and compare within employee groups. But I just want to be clear that all of our administrative positions are salaried, so they're FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act exempt. They just get paid an annual salary, but the daily rate and the hourly rate are just some behind-the-scenes ways that we look at the data just to help us compare across employee groups and compare within different contract days. So we
might add there, Jim, just to our context. I believe that when this was performed in 2020, that it looked purely at the hourly rate. And what wasn't recognized, and the correction that Jim has made, is that they didn't look at the days of contract. And so though your hourly rate may be the same or your daily rate may be the same, I'll pick on the athletic director because Tim's no longer with us. Let's say that most athletic directors within the state were a 230-day contract, 235, and Tim was working at 260. So those extra 30 days on a daily rate exploded the salary, and we didn't see the salary, we saw the daily rate. So we were cognizant of that. Jim already knew it, but Carrie and I were both very apparently we want that to be addressed so that we don't get surprised by a daily rate, hour, daily, and contract days. So those all are recognized in this process.
And the contract days been adjusted. We're more in line with other AA's now, aren't we, for the number of contract?
We are more aligned, yes.
Okay.
And through that process, there's some mechanism levers in which we had to pull to get everything back into order. And we had to, depending on employee law, could we reduce a salary, or did we have to reduce the salary by lack of, or reducing the number of contract days associated, right? So those are some levers, and it's going to be several years as we correct through this before that becomes fully implemented, as through attrition.
Thank you, Rex. That's a super important point, that we did consider those contract days this time around and took that into consideration. And yeah, like Rex said, Montana Code Annotated talks about the daily rate. It talks about we have to provide the same salary if the jobs don't change significantly, and same salary means the same daily rate. So we, HR perspective, kind of have to reconcile MCA that talks about daily rate and the Fair Labor Standard Act that talks about annual salaries, and that's kind of some of the work we're doing behind the scenes. So what we're going to do when we implement the new administrative wage matrix, you'll see it has 15 different levels or 15 different steps. Most organizations have some sort of wage range for management positions, whether they're steps or just a wage range and you pay within that range. So this is bringing us more in line with typical compensation practices. The steps does provide that predictability. Our intent is for step 5 to approximate the market. So we're doing the market analysis. We are, unless there's a job content or qualification reason to the contrary, we try to place positions in the wage range that the person will hit market by step 5, and then they'll continue to progress a little bit past market. And I'll show you kind of what that progression looks like as people move through on our next slide there.
Can I ask really quick, then I'm seeing the note that says that the steps are not based on just number of years. So how does the 1.5% pay into, will these numbers change every time an annual increase is determined? So this isn't stagnant, right?
Right, it's the same process we follow with the independent salary matrix or with union contracts, for example, right? We have a salary matrix we're starting with, and then as general wage increases are approved, each step in the cell is adjusted at 2.5% or 2% or whatever it is. So the matrix that Jim is showing you has already been adjusted by the 2.5% minimum wage increase that was approved last month.
And it's not stagnant.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, Chair Walsh, is we don't want to just set these ranges and then leave them, because then we're going to fall way behind the market again. So there's, 2 elements to the wage matrix. Is one, we've got to keep it current, and like Carrie said, adjusting the entire wage matrix upward by the general wage increase is how we do that. We'd suggest supplementing that with maybe periodic market studies to see if those relationships have changed. There's really 2 things that affect, oversimplification, 2 things that affect wage growth would be inflation and then supply and demand. So cost of living goes up 3%. Well, we've got to raise the wage matrix 3% just to keep people whole. But then you may have supply and demand issues in certain occupations, and that may cause a wage or a salary to spike up in a certain occupation or not. So keeping this thing contemporary and current and not stagnant is important.
And then with it not being years of experience, and we're just seeing numbers here, how do we determine which one of these a person, maybe coming brand new or transferring to new roles, like where they would fall on the spectrum?
Yeah.
So Jim's going to talk about it. So like we did with the independent salary matrix, for implementation purposes, we look at the person's current wage and we put them at the step closest to their current wage.
Okay.
Going forward, and that's what Rex was saying, it's going to take some time to do some course corrections, but going forward then, as we hire new individuals, we'll apply our pay plan rules to set their salary. So we'll have a range that we can put people in based on their years of experience. But at this moment, everybody will be at the step that's closest to their current salary.
Without going backwards.
I'm sorry?
Without going backwards.
Correct. There will be no one will see a reduction in their compensation. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And when it comes to those new hires, these pay plan roles we're talking about, Carrie will have some criteria. So if somebody comes to the district with, previous experience, like some of the folks we introduced today, Carrie will have some criteria to say, okay, where can I place these people? Somebody who just just meets the minimum qualifications of the job would typically come in at the beginning step. But if they have, more qualifications, Carrie will have some guidelines to place that. Or frankly, we just may have a supply and demand issue and have to place somebody a little bit higher. And, part of what we're looking at, the pay plan rules then would be, do we need to do equity adjustments for some of the other folks if we had to bring somebody in higher? So those are some of the pay administration things we're looking at behind the scenes. But it'll take time. Like Carrie said, we may have some pay relationships that don't particularly or exactly make sense right now, but that's because we're kind of capturing the current situation. And then over time, with Carrie applying those rules and making good decisions and hiring everything, the goal is for everybody's pay then to make sense as far as internal pay relationships. So you'll kind of see on the consistent progression, basically we want to get people to the step 5. So somebody will start out at the beginning step, they'll get 2% increases, approximately 2% increases per year until they hit step 10, and then those increases drop down to 1% for those next 5 years. So this is a shorter runway than we have, say, for our teachers or for our independents. The goal being we want to get people to the market rate fairly quickly. I mean, within 5 years isn't super fast, but then we got to continue to progress people as they gain experience. And then, once people start getting a little above the market, then we slow down that progression to those 1% increases. So again, this will allow us to provide progression throughout the range. They're going to progress until we get to about 110% of market, then we'll reduce those increases to step 15. Basically, all our administrators right now fall below this step 15, so everybody will see an increase on the step matrix for this July 2026. And then after that, once somebody hits step 15, they're not going to get any more steps, but they'll still be eligible for those general wage increases. So, they won't lose money each year, they'll still get the general wage increase, they just wouldn't be eligible for a step. At this first cycle, everybody should be eligible for at least one step before they hit that step 15. So we already kind of talked about the next slide, the placement on the administrative wage matrix. Basically what that's going to be is just rounding them up to the next closest step. So we're going to implement the general wage increase, the 2.5%. After that's implemented, the example I have here is somebody after that increase was getting paid $62.77 an hour. So they're grade 21, so we look on the matrix, the next available step from $62.77 to get them on the matrix without losing money would be the $63.86. So those are the increases we're talking about for this cycle, in addition to the general wage increases, just getting everybody onto a step. So it's not going to be any more than a 2% increase to get them on step. Some folks landed, pennies away from the next step, so it's going to cost, $100 or something to get them onto the step for the next year. Some folks are a little further behind. It may cost as much as $1,000 to get them on step for the year. But then everybody will be placed on a step. We'll have everybody ranked in the matrix, and again, it's going to really support kind of our budgeting, our equity, our transparency. And again, it won't necessarily equate to years of service once they're on these steps. We already kind of talked about the next slide, the administrator pay plan rules. Rex talked about the 2 different titles. We've got non-certified administrators, so that's like HR, finance, IT, facilities. Basically, our pay plan rules will be the guiding force in setting pay there. Our certified administrators, principals, assistant principals, we do have some implications in Montana Code Annotated about setting pay or maintaining pay. So if somebody's basically a tenured employee or certified employee is re-elected each year at the same salary in the same or comparable position, we can't reduce their pay. Like Rex talked about, we could reduce the number of contract days if we need to, but we got to maintain that same daily rate. If somebody's an administrator and they step down to be a teacher, we can reduce their pay. Or if they're an administrator and they step down to a lower administrator job, stepping down from a principal to assistant principal, we can reduce their pay, but otherwise, people are typically pay protected. So Carrie does have to consider those requirements in Montana Code Annotated when administering pay. Typically voluntary demotions will result in a reduction of salary, and typically, a demotion resulting from a district reorganization or having to place somebody there, we typically pay protect those folks. So again, Carrie will be administering those, and we're developing pay plan rules in consideration of all this stuff, the Fair Labor Standards Act, Montana Code Annotated, internal practice. The next thing we already talked about, like I said, is the conversion to the daily rate. So Carrie, behind the scenes, is going to be making sure everybody's paid equitably. Then when it actually shows up in the administrator's contract, their annual salary will be their daily rate times the number of contract days. That'll be their salary for the year. So just want to give you a recap of what the administration implementation is going to look like. They're going to progress from the step at which they're hired or placed during implementation and receive annual step increases each July 1st until they reach the top of the range, which would be that step 15. Anybody who's not currently at step 15, which we don't have anybody, will get that step increase. I think we may have a handful of people after this year that may hit that step 15. So it's looking pretty good as far as implementation, what people are going to see with their adjustments. And then just to give you a sense, Gary, the next slide is the general wage increase. So we are implementing the board approved 2.5% general wage increase. That's already been approved, so this is just the next step, is to place administrative employees on the closest corresponding step on the new matrix. This will affect about 30 employees. So just to the next slide there, Gary, the fiscal impact is about $33,000 to make this adjustment and get these 30 employees on the wage matrix. So just want to pause there and see if we have any questions about kind of what we're hoping to do and seeking approval on, then I'll talk about the next steps.
I have a question. You have 4 grades. How do we know who falls in what grade? What positions fall in what grade?
Yeah, Carrie's tracking all that. We do have a spreadsheet.
That's based on the classification rules that I've developed with Jim, and so Jim and I and Caleb, so CMS and I went through and we benchmarked all the administrative positions based on market data and job descriptions, looking at knowledge, accountability, and I'm spacing on the last one, accountability, complexity, and qualifications.
Yes.
And so positions were benchmarked based on where they fell. So assistant superintendent, I believe, is grade 23. High school principal is grade 22. The majority of our administrative positions fell to grade 21. We do have a couple at grade 20. So as Jim's going to talk about next steps, is I do want to get administrators together to explain that classification manual and how we do that analysis and setting positions based on job descriptions. This is where it gets touchy, right? It's on job descriptions, not on the employees. So we look at job descriptions and their content and how that's assessed based on the market, and then we apply our pay plan rules, and then again, we do have some levers that we can pull based on internal equity or things of that nature. So that's the messiness behind the scenes that is part of those next steps, is to get that training out so people are aware of how this process works and where everybody falls.
Thank you. Not everyone knows that the superintendent is outside of this matrix. And is that the board chair and the superintendent work together yearly. So I just want that we
Yeah.
That's a good point. Good reminder. Yeah, the superintendent does not fall in this admin salary matrix.
Yeah, great point. Okay, thanks for the question. And so just to wrap up next steps, to kind of tell you what we're going to be doing on to the next slide there, is so we are going to be finalizing these pay plan rules. Carrie's got some good guidance from your legal counsel and some pieces of the puzzle we needed to wrap those up. So that'll be our next step. We've been applying the pay plan rules to administer employee pay, and then like Carrie said, our next big step will be to communicate the classification system, like Jane mentioned, making sure folks know what grade they're landing in and why and everything. That'll be the next step as far as the internal communication. And then next slide there, just want to, our long-term plan is just to continue monitoring things. Now we've got this context or structure within which we can kind of monitor our system. We can compare positions against each other. We've got this classification system, so as duties change or added or taken away from jobs, Carrie can make informed decisions about how that impacts the pay range of the job. We are going to recommend you keep the pay matrix up to date with the general wage increases like we talked about, and then conduct periodic salary surveys or market studies just to make sure we still have our finger on the pulse of the market and are keeping up there. So that is what we're proposing to do with the system. I think the major issue now is just the seeking approval of the moving forward to get the administrators on the new wage matrix.
So looking back then, so we have the page with the consistent progression where we have the 222 and then eventually moving into the 1. So that's where the equity comes in with each step. So instead of this 5 and 6 was 2.5 for this grade, then over on this grade, well, it only ended up being 1.5. And so it removes the randomness, right? Okay.
Yeah, we saw that, Trustee Walsh, we saw that specifically with our independent. That independent matrix was a 2, 3, 5, 1, half, 4. It was all over the place, and so it was very random. And on the current admin one, there's not one. It's one. It's just it. Like there's no movement at all. And so I would think also a great question. The piece maybe just to allude to is that you just didn't pick this out of the air. I mean, you studied all the other AA's, you found out what organizations, you found out what the state does, and so this is a case study on what's appropriate best practices. So it wasn't just we're making something up. This is an example of what others are doing across the state, and probably across the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and I think one other point too, if I may, these progression percentage increases are. Carrie, check me if I'm wrong, but they are more conservative than what we're doing for independents and for teachers. And this whole process or system contemplates what you were talking about earlier is the folks on the lower end of the wage range or that do get slightly higher percentage increases. The percentage increases are a little more conservative at the top end. So this system does recognize that our administrators are paid more in accordance with the market, and that was another consideration with the equity as well.
Okay. So essentially, if we had no annual increase, I know we've been doing 1.5, 2.5, whatever. If it's to a point where like, sorry, everyone's staying where they at, then they'll realize that 2% just by moving up this step.
For those that are eligible until they reach step 15, yes. So
Okay.
they would see potentially anywhere from 2% to 1% depending on where they are until they reach step 15, which is practice with all employee groups.
And completely tied
progress.
to your employee group, your grade,
Yep.
your step.
Yep.
Cool. Well, what questions do we have? Yes.
I believe we ran into trouble because a lot of times the administrators would say, well, we're in budget trouble, so we just won't take an increase, and then we got behind. So now we have matrices in place, which is super helpful. But how about do we have a schedule for reevaluating the market? And does that typically happen every 5 years, or? So that I just don't want to get behind and have that happen again.
Yeah, I think we talked about every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
We also have that in our admin handbook as a practice, and so again, really thrilled that we have CMS on board that can help facilitate and ensure that we are doing that on a consistent basis.
No less than 3 years. And right now, we've got all the AA soups on board I'll send a letter to them, say, we're doing the study again. Give us your data, and we'll give you a complimentary update of what it looks like. And so it's a mutualistic relationship. They're all pretty good except for our friends down south of us, and I don't know what happens in that district.
Yeah, Jim's made friends with all the AA districts. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And they're great people down there.
And then the other piece, what was I going to say? Oh, I slipped my mind, come back.
But as I said earlier, I do not want this to be one-time information. We've got to be able to keep it not stagnant. We've got to grow these numbers with all payroll. There's a guy out of Wyoming that we use with the teachers negotiation. It's Dale Genova, I think his name, and he does a lot of data work. And we always are trying to figure out what's the current market, because we can't make logical decisions unless we know what the current numbers look like. And so we've got to keep CMS and the AA suits and St. Pete's, Blue Cross, State, Carroll, we got to know what those are doing in our region as well. So we're not just pulling school districts, we're also competing against people that are living here in town, in our region. So we're also pulling those numbers.
You know what it was, sorry, and Jane brought this up, because this has been such a controversial issue, and this was not in the packet, is this going to be, this information, will that be available, or is this more?
We'll post it.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll
That's
talk about
important.
later, as we got our new website up and running. I want to put this also, if you look at other districts, you can get to HR, admin, teacher, independence, Paris, you can pull their salary matrix down. That's where I want to live as well. So we're going to have this posted on online.
Yeah, I think that's important.
We already have the independent salary matrix and the pay plan rules posted on the HR webpage, so again, the goal is, as Rex said,
I want
would be
this to
to
be
have everything
transparent.
transparent as we continue to get improvements and approvals and training. I want to balance that with ensuring people understand a classification system. This is new to our district and new to our culture, and so I want to be thoughtful about not just putting it out there without training and understanding people having time to ask questions, because we know when you put a point system to a job that equates to a person, they see that as their value. And so it's a very delicate communication that I want to be very thoughtful about and really take some time to do that training.
I don't know, Jim, if you've known this yet, but I asked Josh, Justine, and Carrie to have you meet with our admin team as they come in October, or in October. You don't have to come to us. Josh, Justine, you've got a lot of work to do. When you come in August, to have CMS sit with them and answer questions and run through this again in a little paper. I also think that then we also need to send that out to our district at large to make sure that everyone.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Just a quick question or a comment. So Rex, Jim, and Carrie, thank you very much. As a former administrator 25, 30 years ago, it was always mysterious of what was going to be paid. And Siobhan said it best, when the district was in tough times, the soups at those times would come to the administrators and say, we're freezing, we're not going to be able to give you a raise, whatever that was. And you know, we swallowed it and we took it and we moved on, but it's so nice to actually see an actual system of placement our administrators on. So thank you to all of you. For myself, I'm thinking, wow, it's finally gone. Thank you very much for the time.
To that point, Keith, and for us, living in a time where the mysterious nature of a budget, not sure what it looks like, and then we're going to just freeze groups, gets you into, and we've seen this over and over again, get you in a time of scarcity and then catch up. And we're in catch-up mode, nothing good happens out of that. You have to expand your budgets and try to get everybody back up to some sort of a level, and that's really difficult. If you're more proactive, have a schedule in place that's transparent, people understand that we can budget for it, then that makes a more healthy system to work in and operate and work in. So we're all about making sure that we have a system in place that's not mysterious and it's non-emotional, right? This is what it is, and we're moving forward.
Other questions?
It's been a lot of work to get to this point.
It has.
Has not been
It
easy.
certainly has. Yeah. Okay, well with that, I think we're going to move into a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, but how about a second?
I'll second.
I'm gonna steal it.
I didn't listen to it.
deserve it.
We were-
Who'd you steal it from?
Anyone.
You do it, Ty.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any further board comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0. Moving straight into number 3, approval and ratification for the HPS International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And the
As
rest
much
of
work
that.
as Carrie's done through negotiations and 2-year contracts, we still have 2 left?
They're now one again.
We have 1?
One, our crafts, so our plumbers and mechanics, so they were thinking about a divorce, but they made up and came back together, so we've got one group left.
One last thing, as Jim's still here,
Thank you, Jim.
I really want to start getting away from having these contracts, and I get it through negotiations and when our teams can't come together, but even with our admin team and all others, I really want to get these into April and May, June, because once we get to end of June, or into our fiscal year, so we roll into July, then you have to start, you call all kinds of things. Over the years we've had retro pay, bonus, whatever they look like, and those are simply course corrections for your first payroll of the fiscal year comes in July. But if you don't pass these contracts and or approvals into late July, we can't get that paid until August, so you got to go back and correct that July. And that correction often gets considered as a bonus pay or retro pay or back pay, and those have really negative connotations. So I want to start moving into a much earlier time, and I hate that spring because there's so much going on, but we need to start bringing these to you earlier, just to get away from the public perception that people are getting back paid. All it is it's a contract correction for July, but it doesn't look good, so I want to start moving those up a little bit. Fair enough? Okay. So here we are negotiating, here in the wee hours or the beginning of another fiscal year.
Yeah, so we met on June 11th. It was a 2-year agreement. We have language for 2 years, but you will see this group coming back to you next year for salary increases. But what we agreed upon was a 2.5%, which is what we've negotiated with other employee groups. And then a $1,000 retention bonus to be paid in 2 installments, one in July and one in December. This group is one that works very favorably with us. They are always interested in what they can do to go to legislature and promote and be advocates for us. There is recognition that for this group we do continue to fall behind market a little bit, but they recognize the opportunities with working with the school district, and so we did agree to the 2.5 with a $1,000 retention bonus. So that's what you have in front of you for consideration.
Okay. What questions do you have? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then.
For approving and ratifying the HPS International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers collective bargaining agreement for 26 to 28.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comments? Further board comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 6-0. Moving now into the Character Strong curriculum approval. Is that just?
That's me.
Okay.
Course correction on this one, and I did put it in the memo. This is a 5-year commitment, $204,000 spread over 5 years.
Chair Walsh, forgive me, I did not do a memo. I didn't realize until after it was posted. So what you have before you is an estimate quote for 5 years of a curriculum for Character Strong, and as you'll see, the quantity is 10, so it's going to support our K-5, our elementary buildings, with a couple licenses for middle school tier 2. So what it's being used for in middle school right now is support for our students that need it and are screening in to show that they have skill deficits. I have some additional resources here we can pass out. I only printed 5 copies, so you might have to share. What you are going to be looking at is the rubric we used with the counselors to vet 2 curriculums. We looked at Second Step, which we've been using. You were up for renewal of Second Step, and Character Strong had been introduced as a Tier 2 resource with the MTSSB work with the Inuit group. And so there were quite a few of our counselors interested in looking at Tier 1. Last spring, May, we had presentations from both Second Step and Character Strong about the usability and tools within. The Character Strong curriculum had so much more opportunities for school, inclusion, thematic, monthly emails, units, and then just development of a school and a community within the school versus just a skill-based curriculum that's pretty singularly focused. So, yeah, any questions? Maybe I'll stop talking.
This is about a $40,000 a year investment, not $204 per year.
Good to know.
I'll just add a personal experience. It's getting to be old, but we've already gotten some emails on whether this is necessary, and it can be kind of controversial. And when I first started teaching, I'm like, I don't want to take up any of my math time with this. But then when you actually do it and you see how much the kids responded and the positive impact that it had on your students, and especially as we move to kids that have spent a lot of time on screens and maybe don't have the emotional regulation that they might have had in the past, it's really valuable. And you can talk to Justine and if people ask you about that and get more information.
The other thing, this comes with the process. So not only our counselors are responsible for delivering the instruction, which is also non-prep time. So our counselors and teachers work in partnership at a Tier 1 level to impact our students proactively. We also have a system to do some intervention. So the screening that we do every year, K2 youth needs screener, that's assessed by the teacher, and then the 3-5 is a student self-assessment that gives us data that then we can respond to and support students with the Tier 3 resource. I opted not to invest in the Tier 3 resource because we have a lot of good systems already in place that were replicated here. And the other thing that's really important for me and what we've talked about as a group too, similar to our academics, our math, ELA, we shouldn't be speaking different languages in different tiers, and that's what we're doing with our students. So a unified, consistent, and continual approach to proactively addressing our students' needs is really important.
There's a theme. Consistent systems.
Yes. And PD's built in, you'll see. Very important.
So looking then with, I believe this is the Character Strong assessment here, concerns and areas for improvement. Number 1 says that the biggest concern was the system and the data management piece of it. So that outweighs the benefits of choosing Character Strong, outweighs maybe some of the cumbersome issues of having to do, sounds like maybe manual entry.
So both systems have manual entry. With the Character Strong, what we've been experiencing over the past few years is just as they're building it out, because it is a fairly new resource, there's a lot of time where the counselors are manually entering or reposting, copying, pasting what the results are. It will, after talking with the rep, they are still making adjustments. So we talked about that as a group. We have a system in place for now, but it will continue to be improved. And then we're looking at different MTSS systems and maybe possible plugins for PowerSchool to alleviate some of that. Okay. So we are addressing that. Great question. Thank you for reading. I love that.
Questions or comments from trustees? Okay, this is an action item, so I would accept or entertain a motion for number 4.
I move the approval of the Character Strong curriculum as presented.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Any further board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Passes 6-0.
Is it 5 for elementary?
Oh, sorry, yes. Okay, so that was a good point. So I'm serving specifically on the high school board. So I don't vote on elementary matters, so it is 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, trustees.
Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you, Dr.
You know,
Roberts.
this was a big lift.
Josh, you get the next one?
Yep.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and move into number 5. Approval of Mount Ascension Elementary and Middle School removal from charter status.
Yep, so thank you. So the board, or the prep memo describes kind of information at the beginning. The first 2 parts are informational, the last part is the action item. So a little bit of background information, I'll go try to be quick about it, but remember there's about 3 reasons for why we pursued charter schools in the first place. One was big one, to continue to provide unique opportunities for our students. That was first and foremost. Secondly, had to do with, a market relevant approach to education. That'll kind of go back into the last few years of our legislature, really working on implementing charter schools in our state. So they authorized publicly funded, publicly administrated through school boards, charter schools. There's still that proposal that hasn't been decided on charter schools paid for by the public but operated privately. That hasn't come to fruition yet. So we're doing publicly funded, publicly administrated, public board of trustees, management of charter schools. The reason why that's important is when we I think it's important to remember, like, we have some really unique learning opportunities in our community, like PAL, Montessori, Explore School, those kinds of things that we wanted to make sure we continued our market relevance, market share, because if someone else wanted to do a privately funded or a publicly funded private Montessori school, we wanted to lock that kind of concept up for our community because we do that already, we do it well. So it was important to maintain that. Thirdly, we were in the tougher times with budgeting. We had, talking about $8 million deficits, corrections a few years ago. We're in a much better place because we pursued things like charter schools that get us a basic entitlement in addition to the per pupil allotment. So the basic entitlement associated with the high schools, for example, is around $250,000 each that we get for our Mount Ascension High School and our PAL and those kinds of things, in addition to having relevant educational opportunities and locking up that market share so that we have that program for us that we operate. So all of that information leads us to maybe a little bit of why. So the public school, this contract, we contract with the Board of Public Ed to offer charter schools. So upcoming, the performance reports are annually submitted. So those documents behind the cover page were already submitted. Every charter school has to turn those in and forecast changes or upgrades or evolution of their SMART goals, those kinds of things of how we're going to manage forward. What you'll see, and why I wanted to become informational at this time, is in the coming year, you'll see a charter school report come as part of a board packet. It doesn't have to be acted on within like a voted action item, but it also, it's not like an item for information that needs to be presented every time. So it's kind of unique. It's like this document needs to be shared as information to the board, but it doesn't have to be acted on. So we'll all work with superintendent and board chair on where that fits in your monthly board packet, but it's kind of like a consent action item. It requires action that you got the report. It doesn't require that you need to make a decision with it. It's really similar to those out-of-district approvals. You know, you authorize us to operate that, and then you get informed with attendance. So you'll see that. You'll probably have in the Teaching and Learning Committee more presentations by about the charter school, but that's because it's a special contract for a public ed and requires an increased amount of board interaction, okay? So that's kind of the why is it coming this way to you? I wanted you to know, I wanted you all to know when you're like penning a letter or signing a document for a charter school, you know why, and that it's been talked about more so than just, here you go, sign it, and then on board. But so that's kind of it. So the first two parts of part 3. So I talked about the why you're going to see something regular. Now we're getting into part 3, which is goal adjustment. So I can kind of talk about the specifics, but when we originally wrote our goal to the charter school, and Jenny knows a lot about this, I really think it was misinterpreted by the Board of Public Ed. So the part where I need to be more clear on what that means. That goal was intended to say that kids that were starting the program and oriented to the program were successfully oriented to the program. So you had a successful orientation to PAL and a successful connection to career goal. But they interpreted it and changed it. They have a new person up there. They changed it to a graduation rate goal. That was never the intention of the goal. It was about completing orientation only. So it's in the weeds, but I'm proposing a different kind of SMART goal for them. And I reflected on that in the report annual performance summary. So there's that. So it's a better goal. So it's more based on, I'm writing a better SMART goal, something that's more, we can account for it. For it to be a SMART goal, you have to have data to be able to say you achieved it or not. And so I'm writing it more clearly. So the new goal is at least 24 students will succeed in graduating through the orientation phase of learning it now. The hard part about that goal is there might not be 24 starting in here, but you have to have a number. So they don't kind of get that it ebbs and flows with incoming kids. Just like you can't say 24 kids will graduate there because the senior class might be 12. So there's some massaging that goes on.
And they won't take a percentage.
Yeah, right. So then you need to be a little more specific to help folks understand the SMART goal. Doesn't mean they don't like the program. I mean, the program ranks really well. It's fine. It's just a revision of SMART goal, for example. The next one is the Mount Ascension High School goal adjustment. So that one, it talks about the first one, the former goal was about, and I think the intention was right, kids would do better in the online program than they were in the traditional high school. So that was the intention of the goal, to try to measure how is it doing better. The problem with it, the way I wrote the goal, we wrote the goal originally, was accelerated rate of credit earning is really hard to measure. Because, if they weren't attaining credits, then and they were attaining more, you can measure that. But sometimes our kids go there because it's the educational program they need. It's not that they weren't earning credits in their former high school plan, which you'd assume that would count for you, but then when you try to do the data tracking, like that doesn't make sense. So then those kids would have been stagnant in their growth rate for credit accrual, and then that would have been a negative data point explanation. So then that's a terrible goal. So the next new version of the goal is percentage, 90% of graduating students complete a post-secondary graduation action plan, which describes their connection to career, workforce, that kind of thing. So it's more, are they connected to career, which is similar to what PAL's final goal is. Are you connected to your next after high school, something relevant to your life? So we're changing that charter goal. So those are literally just goal adjustments that are a regularly cycled thing, because when you go to measure data. The meat of this whole conversation is trying to get to this action item, which is a K-8 action item only. So the worst fear, are kids going to lose programming? The answer is no. So kids aren't losing anything, but what I'm requesting you to do is support us in the part where we're going to request that we pull Explore School and the online middle school not to be part of Mount Ascension. When we applied for Mount Ascension, it was 3 parts. It was Explore School in grades 1 through 8. It was online, and then it was online high school. So the online high school is not changing. We're not trying to change that. We have a real positive enrollment. We have real positive enrollment trends. We get the basic entitlement. We have students accessing that either full-time or part-time status, so it makes sense. The hard part about Explore School, and we have about 20 A and B in there, spread over about 80 students. It's a part-time educational program located at Exploration Works. So it's a good program, but it's not operating to the level of it's being a whole school. We're getting graded negatively on our data submissions in math and English because it's STEM focused. So then the population of people, students that go there aren't seeking math and English. So then testing them in math and English and or generating English and math, these are part-time enrollments that do not want to be graded by the state with math and English. So then because their state is expecting that comprehensive education occurs there, including things like math and English lessons, that's not the design, and we're getting, I would say, negative rankings on that, but we're delivering exactly what we intended to deliver. So it doesn't make sense for us to keep it as a charter school status to us, because we aren't getting a basic entitlement. We'll continue the Explore program the way it is and keep the 20 A and B and keep offering that educational experience to kids. Doesn't make sense that we're going to continue to get negative red rankings on the contract place, and then we're not ever going to be able to meet that with that educational model. So I'm asking that we revise it and pull it out, but then we're still maintaining the program and the service to the children, but then since it's not generating an extra revenue, we're going to be challenged to grow it at that site with their space. Exploration Works is growing its program around early childhood, preschool programming. So our space availability there isn't great. So with that recommendation, there comes a contingency that I want to add into our letter to the board of public ed that says we reserve the right to reinstate it if conditions change. Because right now the conditions for charter schools are that you have to test the math and the reading and report results. I imagine that could change one day because I think they're considering someone legislatively, OPI, others, online elementary programming, for example, through Open Ed or another system that we might want to take another run at Mount Ascension elementary version in a new way, which we could easily add in, but that also has a supporting system where we're not getting negative results, feedback ranking on that program. So that's kind of the why we're reserving the right. The middle school online one, literally there aren't enough kids in it to, there's like 4 or 5 A and B that participate. Most of the kids that participate in the online are participating exclusively in person, or portions of their day are blended between their regular middle school and online. They're not really doing online to a great amount. So then when we try to describe proficiency, growth, math, reading, we don't have enough kids or data to support that that's working. So then it's kind of the cost value of why are we doing it. We still will offer programming to students that are online in the middle school, and we'll do that through literally you enroll them at your regular middle school, and then we'll offer Montana Digital Academy learning experiences. So then that's what every child can do now in our state. They can enroll in the public school and take MTDA classes if they want. So we'll continue that, but not as a charter. So then services are going to stay the same for kids, but they won't. We won't be charter status for the elementary and middle version of Mount Ascension. And high school Mount Ascension stays the way it is. So that's the requested action item with charter schools.
Questions, comments?
Our retaining the right to reinstate, whichever you were using, does that preclude someone else from coming in, like in that private, if they were able to start a private school that isn't under our private charter, if that goes through, and of course I hope it doesn't, would that keep someone from starting middle school like Mount Ascension charter because we still have the right to reinstate?
I don't know. I think the part where.
They could start it, but this gives us the option to also start it and do it better.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the conditions need to change, but I think the part where, Rob's back here knows a lot about this, but there's like some proposed multi-district accounts where folks do, or agreements, where there would be online experiences through a private provider that the public school has a relationship with. I don't know how they're sorting out testing and who's responsible for student growth or those kinds of things, but I do think we need to always continually be informed so that we don't be surprised by something like that, because we know if there's a primary enrollment amount, we want to be the provider of that. And so then, that's why I definitely reserve the right, and we'll see if they accept it or not. But I think the part where we have a contract with the Board of Public Ed. So I guess the other thing I forgot to mention, we have an option A and B here. The option A is the one where we adjust our charter plan that we decided to do. Option B would be really to write a corrective action plan that shows that we can remediate the challenges in that program, but we can't do that. Like, we're not going to be able to fulfill the components of the corrective action plan that we write up. So I don't want to continue thinking that we can and then put the district at risk for its measurement of the charter contract parts that are working well. And the Mount Ascension's tied in 3 different ways to one thing. When we're getting a basic entitlement out of high school one. Mount Ascension, we're not getting a basic entitlement out of the middle or the elementary one. So I don't want that contract to be questioned.
As you can tell, Mr. McKay has put a lot of time and energy and thought into this. He understands it well. I trust his recommendation. The unintended consequence of any time you start something new is that what we found out is the Explore School and the parents purposely chose that system of education. And of that choice was they didn't want the state assessment piece. And yet we are hounding our parents to come in and test. And it's causing a significant rub with our district and our community. And we are no longer in the, we would like to not have that conflict where parents don't want to and we say, well, you have to. Who says? The state says. And so it's been a really difficult transition with our parents. And we didn't see that coming as, and I don't know if anyone truly saw that, but that's an unintended consequence. But with that being said, I will turn it back over to Chair. This is an elementary decision again, and then we've got some guests coming at us quickly. So,
quick question. The entitlement is part of the Cam's proposal, right? Increasing the elementary and middle school entitlement. Is that right, Rob?
Rob, is there an increase in charter school basic?
Part of the proposal, the Cam's proposal?
Yeah, all entitlements.
Yeah. So if that would happen, would that make a difference?
We don't have the numbers to support. You have to have 10 students per grade level to make that happen. So we're not getting it anyway.
Yeah, we're doing 20. We have 20 full A and B, and so that means
we're not losing.
First grader, 10 of them a quarter of the time.
Sam leans over and says, we're going to lose money on this? And we're not, because we're not getting it in the first place. We don't have enough students enrolled.
Okay, yeah, all right.
I just want to clarify in the testing real quick. They do require the state testing, but the elementary enrollment is only a quarter A and B, which is a partial enrollment. So logistically, we cannot test those students because they only enter into the state testing system if they're a full AP. So we tried to make up for that this year by doing in-district iReady and Acadians assessments, and that's where we ran into this rub. So we kind of had two issues there. Like one, we're never going to meet the state standard because the state system isn't set up for us to meet the standard. And then we had, we kind of have to go back to the drawing board, rebuilding those relationships with those families in order to get them to understand the value of some testing.
It's pretty technical, but we get, like the reading and the math comes out of two ways. It comes with the Caddis and the charter contract, and then it also comes back with us accreditation. Accreditation is the ranking of a school district by OPI on its learning program. And so then, OPI, different than Board of Public Ed, the contract with Board of Public Ed completely separate from OPI, but we have two tracks to fulfill with the charter school. So right now in math and reading, it's really hard to prove it's working to the Board of Public Ed on what they require. OPI, a whole separate deal on accreditation. They're like, how are you showing that we're growing kids in math and reading with the charter school?
I do think that you have enough information to make a decision. And I'm trying to get it off too long.
I want to make sure that our trustees who are voting
Yeah.
have enough information. Do we have any other further questions? Okay, so I will entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Wonderful, we have a first and second. Do we have public comment?
Lisa.
Okay, do we have any further board comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. 5. We're at 5.
Okay, we're working, I think these next two, board chair, we can wrap into 2. It's a good segue as we put this together, is have Rob come in and then talk about advocacy on the backside. We're only a few minutes late if you look at the total agenda.
If we, yeah, we can get
We're in
creative.
pretty good space.
It's perception. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and hand it on over to you. I don't know where you would like to have the conversation from.
So I'll kick off, introduce Dr. Watson. Is a friend of Helen Public Schools, did some budget consensus work with us. I've known Rob for many, many, many years. Right now, the leader of SAM, School Administrators of Montana. Does a lot of legislative work with the Montana School Board Association, MQEC, Rural Montana, and MASBO, and probably now with MFPE. So Rob's in deep at the Capitol with school funding and the advocacy. Right?
Yes.
Yes. I asked him to be here because there's some significant, as Chair Walsh and I were talking about advocacy at the Capitol, I think there's no better place than where we're going to start with the conversation with Rob. And that CAMPS funding has a significant impact if it's funded to Helen Public Schools in the state of Montana across all districts. So that's why I asked Rob to be here today. It puts in context the work that I think is most important of our trustees to govern me and our team, but also really a statewide issue, which I think is probably something I saw for the first time or maybe second this last session with having trustees at the Capitol in our backyard testifying on behalf of public education. So,
And student trustees.
and student trustees.
They listen to them the best.
They absolutely did. So thanks, Rob, for being here. And did you need something handed out, or did you?
I just did. I don't know if I need to plug in or not. Rex, you tell me if you want me to display anything.
I don't think we have anyone on the line right now. Is this?
There isn't anyone on, okay, we're all here in person.
Okay,
If you want to project, you can. If you just join, if I send you a Teams meeting link, you can join and present.
that'd be great, just in case I have to show any data, I guess.
Yeah.
I can start generally, and then we can go as deep as you want, but I also know you're a little behind schedule, so maybe I can catch you up
We're right
on
on
time.
schedule, my schedule.
Rex told
Which
me
is always late.
Rex told me I had to be here at 1:30, so I feel like I'm early.
You are way early. And Via can wait. She's here. There she is, yeah.
I'll be quick, but some of you have been following the School Funding Interim Commission, also known as the Decennial Study, and that every 10 years we're supposed to study our funding formula. Ironically, on this handout I just gave you, there's some elements of previous studies that I can point to. But the School Funding Interim Commission has been going strong now for 16 months or so, have really made no decisions. They made a kind of a pseudo decision in the last meeting. They haven't confirmed it yet. But one of the things they've signaled is that they want to remove that 3% cap in the next legislative session. So if you're familiar with the school funding formula as it currently exists, there's an inflationary cap. So the legislature is required to fund inflation every session up to 3%. But we obviously know that we've had higher than 3% inflation. So we've actually lost ground in the previous 2 legislative sessions, maybe the previous 3 legislative sessions, because of that inflationary cap of 3%. So even though inflation was at 4% or 5%, you were only funded at 3% inflation for the last 2 sessions.
That's if we pass.
And that's if you pass a levy too, an operational levy. If you decide not to run an operational levy, then you get 80% of 3%, which is 2.4%. So one of the things the School Funding Interim Commission said is that it probably doesn't make sense to have an artificial 3% cap. So I think you'll see that in the session where they'll come forward and say there's, you know, the inflationary factor is set by the legislature and it's not governed by 3%. So that's a good thing if we get there. Other than that, they've really made no decisions about changes to the formula. They've made a ton of discussions. They've talked about special ed, they've talked about school safety, they've talked about teacher retention, they've talked about a number of different things. They've hired consultants to give them an idea of how much we should be spending, but they've made no decisions. They basically have 2 more meetings left. They have a meeting next week here in Helena, and I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, if I remember correctly. It might be Monday, Tuesday.
I think Gary sent that link to you.
Okay.
I did, I sent you a link.
Perfect. Anyway, they have a meeting in July next week, and then they have 1 more meeting in August. And next week's meeting is Monday, Tuesday up at the Capitol. They're required to make some recommendations by August, and then it'll go to the 27 legislature for any potential changes. So a couple of things as I talk about the state of where Montana is right now. 2 things I want you to be aware of. Number 1, we have a declining enrollment, which we've had across the state, not just since COVID. This is not a COVID thing. It's been 30 years of declining enrollment, if you go all the way back to 1990. So just to put that in perspective, the percentage of school-age kids is lower now than it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we had 20% of our state was school-age kids. Right now, we're at basically 14%. That's a huge drop in school-age kids. At the same time, the Montana population has increased. You guys remember that, right? We got an extra representative at the national level. So our population has increased, but the percentage of school-age kids has dropped. The problem is if the entire funding formula is built on the number of kids, like it is, we're going to continue to have budget deficits across the state. And even if you're in an area of increasing enrollment, the statewide budget is going to continue to drop for K-12. So that's one issue. So when we looked at this funding formula, as I said earlier, 90%, 92% of the current formula is based on the number of kids. When we looked at the formula, we had said, how can we shift that so that it's not based on just the number of kids? And the rationale there is pretty simple. You guys see it every day. If you lose 3 kids at one of the elementaries and 3 kids at another elementary, you're not going to cut a teacher. So you have a certain amount of money that's just operational costs. So it does, just because you lose 6 kids across a district, you're going to lose a lot of money from A and B, but it's not enough to cut a teacher. So we need to shift how we fund schools. By the way, we are not alone. Colorado, Idaho, Lots of other states are in the same boat. This national decline in students is a nationwide issue. And so several states are looking at how to shift their funding formula. We're not alone. We just happen to be required to study it every 10 years. So that's the first thing I want you to understand about our current situation. The second thing I want you to understand is how far behind we are, our neighboring states and also the national average. So we're going to be talking big numbers here to fund our formula, but just for a minute I want you to think about how far behind we are. So I'll just go to North Dakota. We are 500 million behind North Dakota on a per pupil basis. So this is apples to apples comparison. North Dakota spends 500 million more per year on a per pupil basis. Nationally, we're 600 million behind the national average on a per pupil basis. So part of that is because of that inflationary cap that was put on, and so we lost a lot of money in those years when we were capped at 3%. So having said all that, when we talk about, we need to infuse 200 million, 300 million into the system, people get concerned because that's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but when you compare us to how much our neighbors are spending on K-12 education, we're pretty far behind in terms of what we spent. So I just want to stop there. So you've got a declining enrollment based on 30 years of declining enrollment, and then you've got this deficit in how much we spend. Any questions about those two things?
Not that it matters right now, Rob, in this conversation, but have we laid that data on top of student learning?
We haven't. The commission hired a consultant that came in and said, basically they did a whole bunch of formulas and said at the end of the day you need to be spending between $8,000 and $9,000 per kid. And we're not doing that. We're doing that at high school, but we're not doing that at elementary, as you know. So that was their rough average. Like you need to be spending between 8 and 9 per kid.
I wonder if North Dakota's student growth or academic prowess is better than Montana.
Yeah, I mean that would be a pretty simple equation to look at. So.
I also thought that the personal income part was interesting too, because people will say like, well, Wyoming has all this, resource development. Yeah. But we spend, I have it right here, about 75% of what North Dakota spends per $100 of personal income. So we're just not spending the money.
Yeah. And we'll continue to hear about property taxes. That's the other unique thing about us. We really only have two sources of income, property taxes and income taxes. A lot of people ask about the lottery money. Keith and I remember when the lottery money was passed years and years ago. The lottery money is a drop in the bucket. I mean, even if we got all of the lottery money, it's maybe 20 million a year. Remember I told you we were 600 million behind. The latest is the marijuana tax. Everybody asks, where's the marijuana money going? That's about 40 million a year. Now, granted, all of that would help, but even if we got all the marijuana money, it's still a drop in the bucket. So we need to think about how we fund, and I don't disagree with that too. It's either income tax or property tax at this point. So I'm going to draw your attention to this sheet that I handed out because there's really only, when we looked at changing the formula, we looked at 4 things to change it. And some of them are big things and some of them are small things. So let me talk about the small things. Now when I say they're small, it's not that they're not important, it's just it's not a whole lot of money. So if you look at item number 2 there, what I'm calling it sort of the student funds. These are all the small things, like we get money for at-risk, we get money for American Indian Achievement Gap, we get Indian Ed for All money, special ed money. These are all great funds, but I mean, you can look at 15 times the at-risk payment. That's great, but it's still not going to bring in a ton of money for you because they're relatively small in the big picture of your budget. These are important things. The things you see there are our recommendations to change that. So yes, increasing special ed, increasing the at-risk payment. Those are things that we're recommending in our proposal. By the way, if you follow this decennial study stuff, so go back 10 years ago, nothing was really changed. the same outcome. They said you need about 200 or 300 million. And we didn't do that. We didn't infuse that money 10 years ago. Go back 20 years ago, they said the same thing. You need about 200 million. The governor at that time decided to infuse 36 million, so that was a far cry from the 200 million. But the way he infused 36 million was adding these, what I call Band-Aids, these at-risk payment, American Indian Achievement Gap. That all came about 20 years ago by the governor responding to a decennial study and also responding to a lawsuit. So the decennial study said 200 million. A lawsuit came out and said you need to fund schools more. The governor said, well, we can give you 36 million, and that's what those Band-Aids were put on the formula.
Was that Schweitzer?
Yeah. So
Mostly they just complicated the formula.
they did. They made the formula a whole lot more complicated because now you've got all these other elements, and then you add on what I call the Band-Aids. They were great things to add, but they weren't. They didn't make it any easier. Something that was missed, and Gary will appreciate this. Of course, 20 years ago, maybe we weren't talking about it as much as we are now. We should have had a fund in there for technology or school safety. And none of that stuff was considered 20 years ago. But those are extra funds. I wanted to draw your attention to those because people say, well, this proposal doesn't do anything for special ed. Well, it does do something for special ed, but it does it using one of those extra funds that are kind of tacked on. The other three big ones, number 1, number 3, and number 4, that's where you get the majority of your money. And we've made some major shifts in those 3 with this recommendation. So remember I told you that the formula is based 92% on number of students. What we've done is we've reduced the reliance on number of students. So you can see that in number 1, we've reduced your A and B payment. So if that's all we did, you would lose a whole bunch of money because, I mean, you're going from, almost $7,000 for a K-5 student down to $5,000 for a K-5 student. So you can't do these one or the other, and a lot of people have asked that question too. Could we cherry pick and just do this and not do that? If you look at 1, 3, and 4, we have to do all those together. Otherwise, you won't get any respite from the change. So first of all, number 1, we reduced the A and B payment. We also removed the decrement. Do you guys know what the decrement is? It's a very confusing part of our formula. It makes no sense. But so let's just say you got $8,000 for every high school kid from the state. You only get $8,000 for the first kid. The second kid, you get 50 cents less. The third kid, you get 50 cents less than that. The fourth kid, you get 50 cents less than that, all the way up to 800. And then at 800, it levels out.
So big districts.
For big districts, the decrement is a huge hit. We estimate $2 in billings is the hit on the for the decrement.
Ours is half that.
Yeah. So the rationale when the formula was constructed, the rationale was it costs less to educate the second kid than the first kid. So anyway, under our proposal, we removed the decrement, which does simplify the formula a little bit by removing the decrement. But again, you get less A and B money, so I mean the decrement will help you, but it's not going to help in the same way it would right now. We have also added 6th grade to high school funding. So currently your 6th graders are funded at the elementary number. We've added it to high school under our proposal. So
Does it have to pass legislatively because it didn't pass the last
it
time?
didn't pass, so all of this stuff would have to pass legislatively. It would be in one big bill. I'm not going to call it one big beautiful bill. It's one big bill. All right. Okay, so how did we add money to the system? We added money in number 4, the basic entitlement. And Josh described that a little bit earlier. You get a basic entitlement just for having a high school or having an elementary school. What we've done with the basic entitlement is we've given you more money for less kids. So you'll get that 2nd and 3rd and 4th basic entitlement for less kids. And I'll tell you how it impacts your district. The numbers are pretty astounding with the basic entitlement change. The other big change we made was in the QEP. So we're shifting away from the number of kids and shifting towards the number of teachers. That's what the QEP is. It's a measure of the number of teachers. So currently you get about $3,500 per teacher as a QEP. With STARS, we've doubled that, so you're getting $7,000 per teacher with that QEP. You can see what we've done. We've went from $7,000 to $30,000 per teacher with a QEP. Not just teachers. Remember, you get a QEP for administrators, you get a QEP for your superintendent, you get a QEP for your counselors, your school psychologists, pretty much anybody that's certified, and your clerk. Okay, so that's the big shifts. Do you understand what we've done? We've moved away from the number of students towards the number of teachers, and then we changed the basic entitlement. That shift alone, remember I told you 92% of your budget's based on the number of students. These shifts make it down to 65% based on the number of students. So that's a big shift away. And let me just, high-level data here. Rex asked me to look at Helena. This is all in, including those changes around the 6th grade and the changes around the decrement. So you actually, just for the basic entitlement, that's number 4, Helena School District stands to make $6.5 million more for basic entitlement. This is if, based on this year's budget, if I just turned on the CAMPS formula and reran the calculation. So basic entitlement, it's an additional $6.5 million. Your QEP, based on the number of teachers that you have, your QEP, you would gain an additional $12.9 million in QEP. So almost $13 million in QEP. That's the good news. The bad news is you would lose almost $11 million in A and B. Okay, so those are big numbers, but let's look at the delta. Overall, you're going to gain $8.5 million as a district, just with items 1, 3, and 4 put together. That's an additional $8.5 million.
Running from student focus to teacher focus gains about $8 million.
8.5. That does not include anything in number 2, so you'll see a little bit of increases from number 2 as well, like special ed and at-risk payment, but the major elements of your formula are 1, 3, and 4. And I always forget to lead with this. The other part of the proposal is that everyone would be funded at 100%. You wouldn't ask for operational levies any longer. Your budget would be funded from the state at 100%. So that's a huge lift, but we know that operational levies with most of that coming from property taxes are really difficult to pass at this point. Most of the districts are operating well above the 80%. So we think it's time to turn that off and just fund everybody at 100%.
Across the state, it's become increasingly hard to pass the levy, is that right?
Yeah. You still have the option to run building levies like you are for Helena High School, Helena Capital. You can still run those bonds. You could still run a safety levy or a technology levy, but you wouldn't be required to run an operational levy. You'd be funded at 100%. So how much does this cost statewide? Statewide, this costs $276 million statewide. Yes, that's a big number. We're 600 million behind the national average, so I'm not going to apologize for asking for that. 276 million. The next question that you're going to get from your constituents is, well, how do we pay for that? We can't put 276 million onto property taxes. So yes, we're going to have to look for other ways. A 1% increase in income tax would cover that. Easily cover that and more. So, but we're in a state, I understand, where our governor and our administration has, has reduced income taxes strategically. And so that would be a big lift to try to encourage them to go back and add 1% onto income tax.
What kind of momentum are you seeing
So two things, I'm glad you asked that, Rex. So two things, initially we heard that there's no money in the state budget this session, so don't expect very much money for anything. Lately, we've heard that the budget picture looks a little bit better, so there may be some money in the session. But is there 276 million? That would be a heavy lift. One thing we're now proposing as a group is we're saying, well, let's phase it in. We don't have to do all of it in the first year, but don't cherry pick. You need to do 1, 3, and 4 together. I mean, I'd hate for a legislator to say, well, let's start with number 1 and increase A and B for everybody. So we have to do all those together, but let's phase it in. So maybe it's not a 1% increase in income tax, maybe it's a 0.25% increase, a 1/4% the first year, and so we can get some additional money to start phasing in these elements. We believe this is the right shift, no matter how you look at it and how long it takes. We believe this is the right shift to change the formula. Did I say anything wrong? Always check with you, because my understanding of school finance just is dangerous. Gets me in trouble a lot.
Sales tax?
It's going to be a discussion. I've been telling my members that our advocacy position, Keith, is to look at what do we need to have a quality education.
Okay.
The legislature has to figure out how to fund it.
We've been saying that same thing through MQEC. We're not going to signal to legislation on how to do it. Here's what we need.
Right.
You all figure out how you want to fund it. I think that, just in respect, we're going to give them the opportunity to figure out what it's going to take.
And it's likely not fair to just say, you have to do all this right now. So a phase in might be the way to go if we can get there. There's general support from every groups that Rex mentioned earlier, the MFPE, the state union. They really haven't weighed in on this. So I don't know if they'll support it or not.
Probably change here with different leadership.
Yeah, it might. So we'll just have to see. We'll continue to discuss it. Speaking to, how complicated it is, I think that's the biggest concern that I hear from even my members, like it's too complicated, all these recommended changes, but our formula is already complicated. We're just recommending some things to make it work better.
So just if I could, I think that there's a lot to absorb with all of this information, and I'm thinking, would you be open to coming back?
You bet.
This also gives us an opportunity to look at what's being proposed, how much, again, momentum support are we getting, and what's the likelihood this will be presented and actually come out of the committee.
Yeah.
So those will be some really great things for us to think about, and maybe we could compile that for our August and have you come back and continue this really hard work. And it's never been easy in the 10 years, but
yeah,
hopefully it's something we're actually tangibly able to look forward, and it not just be, we need to change the funding. Now it's like, here is how we can change that funding.
Yeah, we've presented this to the commission. They've asked a lot of great questions. I don't think you're going to see this, my opinion, I don't think you're going to see this come out of the commission as a recommendation. It'll be something we'll have to continue to talk about at the legislature.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Probably a great segue, maybe just hang for a quick moment, but this runs right into purposely having Rob here and then talking about your advocacy at the Capitol. And so I think that's where you wanted to join in or venture into this, what's it look like, how we're going to do it, and then maybe picking Rob's brain about what's some good methods of who to contact and how do we go about it. So that's all.
Thank you. Yeah, something that we see as a common theme with our communication, right, especially going out to community members, is advocate. These changes don't happen by us sitting in rooms and not expanding out and really talking to other people to help us get this going and to help us get this changed. It's really, I think there's a lot of misinformation about how all of this works. And as you said, where money goes. So everyone hears, well, my property taxes went up, education is a part of that. Well, I don't need to support more money for you guys. Or even things like, people don't realize the small amount that we get our portions from things like marijuana and from the lotto that people are, I'm supporting education, right? I mean, yeah, it's gonna take a look at, but districts for our students at the Capitol. And we're in a unique position that we are here. We live at the Capitol. And it's a great opportunity to get our voices heard, but also role model what we're asking and expecting the community members to do. When we have folks come on up and they're providing board comment on maybe an action item or general public comment, whatever it could be, right? The message, we then turn around and say, we can't change it at this level. So these are the results of that. Please take your concerns, take your comments, go up to the Capitol, figure out where things are happening and show up in that room and provide your comment. Talk to the people who you voted for and let them know this is a concern, this is something important to me, important to the community. It's those types of things that we're finding folks are not taking action on. So there's a lot of this, but no weight and support behind it. And those are proven numbers. We can see how many public comments are made during certain committees, during certain decision times. Who was present, who wasn't present, and it's extremely low. So with that being said, it's not that all of us go hop on up there and we're at podiums and speaking and saying what we need to. We have representatives doing that for us. Now, not to say that we couldn't all go by any means, but what we've done in the past is really have a couple of people who are very passionate about it and comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it when you get up there and then you're targeted with questions and maybe you're not quite as prepared as you thought, or you're not really sure how to answer those questions, or even redirect, stuff like that. We want to make sure that folks are going up there and are strong representatives of our group. So we ended up having a couple of folks go through training. Kay, were you a part of that training? The advocacy training?
No.
We had, who was part of that? Who attended?
Participate, but
Or maybe there was
some advocacy.
Yeah, okay. What we would like to try and do, and maybe it was Linda. Anyways, you didn't.
We didn't have a formal training. Yeah, we did go to the MTSBA meeting, but.
Okay, I thought we had put something together, but then that would be what I would really consider. Yeah, that would, I think, would be really great to be able to kind of have the experts come and educate us and show us what does it look like, how to be prepared so when you are speaking and providing comment, that it's coming across the way that we're hoping that it does, and that we're providing a message that represents all of this group work.
I also have a question along this same topic for Rob. Helena pretty consistently sends legislators who are very strong and pro-public education and work hard for us. That is not reflective of who's coming from the rest of Montana. So is there a way that maybe Sam is doing outreach to smaller communities to tell them to do exactly what we intend to do and have done, but somebody who's here from, I don't know, Sydney, representing their constituency doesn't actually care so much what Helena wants. So is there an effort like that?
Yeah, there is tomorrow. Actually, that's why I'm glad I'm not at 1:30. I'm leaving for Billings and Hardin, so I'm meeting with a group of trustees from Hardin tomorrow, and several in that county from smaller communities. And then during the session, we have a advocacy network, which includes pairing our members up with the legislator in their community, and I know MTSBA does the same thing.
Great.
So that's the best way to get to all those different areas.
Is that a good way, oh, sorry, Sean, is that a good way for, say, this board sees a need for advocacy? The channel in which they get there, we go through you. I mean, we can go through your school board association, right?
Correct.
Usually I'm texting you and saying, hey, Siobhan wants to run up,
Yeah.
when's a good time? And so is that still the option that we have before us?
It is, yeah, and then during the session, it's a lot more hurried, as you can imagine. So sometimes it's the day before when we see a bill that we need your help with. So that's why that advocacy network is so important during the session, because we can blast messages out.
And I will also add that Montana's Organized for Education also has done that the last several sessions, and MAHPAC is winding down, so that will be a loss in that.
Oh, they are. Okay. So I think then what we would look for on this is pooling resources to have folks who are interested in going up, and not just trustees, really anyone who would like to go up and speak during that session, to maybe give some information on what you might expect. And how do you speak individually to folks who might be coming up to you outside of the public comment? And how do you provide public comment that gets the message you're intending to? Because sometimes what you're saying isn't necessarily received in that same way. So that's all that part was, is we're going to be looking for ways that we can really kind of pump up us. And it's so much more than just community communication. It's actually going up and speaking to folks who have the power to make the change.
I will also add, when Eric Fever was still the head of MFPE, there was a specific effort to bring community members, business people, far beyond the Board of Trustees. Under guidance from MFPE, we met weekly in the basement of MFPE with members of Parent Council. I was pretty hard on HEF board members to be part of that, to get the information on what was coming up and get all of these other details, and it might be something that the new leadership is willing to take on.
Yeah, because that's the other piece to it, knowing what is being presented and what's going to have the biggest effect.
Extending beyond parents and trustees to business people, and I'm sure we can get Kelly Ashton to carve another minute out of her ridiculous schedule and participate in that as well, and I'd be happy to.
MFPE does have a rapid response team, and there's one for members and one for non-members. And so there is a already set up.
Right, we get those emails.
Right.
This was also a specific meeting during the legislative session, like Mondays, and I think Eric Berg ran it, but it was pretty productive. It was maybe 20 years ago.
I can take that back.
Another really useful meeting is the, what's it called, Thursdays with MTSBA. I mean, that's also.
Think Tank Thursdays.
Yeah, Think Tank Thursdays, and that gives you very specific, and then also just the MTSBA, and then Dean gives you the, day by day, what's coming up next. Really useful information.
So we do actually have a section on that, on the agenda for today. Speaking to MTSBA, providing some updates. You can see a couple of the things listed there. So with that, I think it's time to go ahead and move on. I want to bring up, I think, Miss Bia, or is that where we're at now?
Oh, okay. And I think also, obviously do a biology break as you need, but we may run a working lunch too. We can grab our food.
Yeah, could we do
and
that, because there's so much value from having you be here and the amount of information that we learn and, gather from it. I really didn't mean to cut your time in half, and, we were.
If you guys don't mind working through having me pull out during lunch and eat, and I'll just keep talking.
Okay.
Let's take a break. Does anybody need to use the restroom?
Yeah,
So it's
so
all-
let's do a 10-minute break, and then we can come back and spend some time getting lunch.
There we go. Lunch and then feed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But like,
Then I'll get right back on track.
5 minutes, you can be like,
I knew it.
I know, but you tried so hard, Rex, I'm trying so hard.